But I think when you talk about illicit porn, casual sex, pornography, even LGBTQ plus, gender and all the good stuff, we are in a moment where this is what sin looks like. Authority is no longer grasped from the outside of me. Mm-hmm. By and large, most people look at authority on the inside of me, right? Like me as the hero.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Other 6 Days podcast. I'm your host, CJ McFadden, and I'm here again with Pastor Ricky Jenkins as we chat about life outside of Sundays and what it means to live from our gatherings and not just for them. So, Ricky, we've got some serious questions here today and some heavier topics.
We do.
So, so let's kick off with something a little bit lighter like we like to do before we get started.
Okay.
So, let me know what are your top 3 desserts you've ever had?
Top 3 I've ever had.
Or like top 3 summertime favorite, whatever you want.
Yeah. It's easy. That's low-hanging fruit. Any homemade German chocolate cake, doesn't matter where it's from. The red velvet here at Sherman's, the deli, the Jewish deli out there. I mean, it's just the best red velvet on planet Earth. The best. My mom's gone to heaven, right? But she used to make every Thanksgiving and Christmas something called Chocolate Delight, which was a homemade pecan crust. It's like if dessert and lasagna came together, right? So it'd be like a layer. That actually sounds whack, but anyways, it'd be a pecan crust, a layer of homemade chocolate pudding, whipped cream, crushed pecans, another layer of pudding, and then another layer of the crust, then double it over again and freeze it for like 30 minutes. It'll set you free.
Oh, man.
It's delicious. What about you?
Oh, that's funny. It's like kind of similar. So mine is, my first one was my classic summertime favorite was always the big stick, popsicles. Got those as a little kid. So that was like my favorite.
So are those the orange popsicles?
Yeah, the cherry pineapple, like kind of tall, just popsicle.
I don't think we could afford those in Mississippi. That didn't come down there. I thought you were talking about remember push-ups?
Oh, the push-ups. Yeah. Those
push-up. Yeah. So big stick is different from push-up.
Yeah. It's like a cherry pineapple, just kind of like regular ice cream that melts all over your hand when you eat it. But the push-ups, those are good too. I mean, you push them up and then you eat the top. It's like a toilet paper roll with ice cream in it. Yeah.
Made out of orange sherbet.
Yeah, there you go.
Big stick. I got to look that up, man. I never had one.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Okay.
And then, of course, the chocolate chunk Pizookie from BJ's.
Oh, yeah. My wife will, she'll kill for that.
Yeah, I'll devour that thing.
Yeah, for sure.
But the big one is, it's funny when you said that about your mom's stuff, is my mom used to make 7-layer magic bars. And so they were like this buttery graham cracker crust topped with chocolate chips, butterscotch chips, coconut, chopped nuts, and finished off with a blanket of sweetened condensed milk. We used to fight with each other over these things.
Mercy.
Yeah. And she'd make these bars and she'd give them to me and tell me to hand them out to the rest of the family. They'd never make it to the rest of the family.
Yeah, of course. That sounds delicious, man. Oh my gosh. Man, you beat me.
Yeah. No. That's good stuff. Well, today we're going to begin a discussion around some trending topics in our post-Christian culture like sex, lust, and pornography. And so I think it might be helpful to set the stage with some statistics and research regarding some of these related topics and then jump into some of your thoughts after that.
Sure, let's do it, man.
Okay. So some of the stats that...
no pun intended. All right. Okay.
Some of the stats that I've got is if Pew Research estimates continue on the current rate, Americans who identify as Christian will continue to fall from 64% to below 50% of the population, and those who identify as none will rise from 30% to over 52% by 2070.
Wow.
Another one is they said that sex before marriage statistics, 65% of the American public views premarital sex as acceptable, and about 9 out of 10 Americans have sex before marriage. The average first sexual age of intercourse in the U.S. now averages 17 years old. The porn industry is estimated to be worth around $97 billion, with annual revenue from U.S.-based companies alone reaching up to $14 billion. Wow. Pornography-related content makes up a significant portion of internet downloads and search engine requests, while an estimated 40 million Americans regularly visit porn sites each month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious.
According to the Department of Defense, some of the most current 2023 statistics on worldwide human trafficking include 99 billion is estimated to be annually trafficked through sex trafficking. 4.5 million people throughout the world are victims of forced sexual exploitation, and California tops that list in the United States. Sex traffickers force girls into prostitution and pornography for psychological control and financial gain. Nearly half of sex trafficking victims report that pornography was made of them while they were in bondage. Yeah. Sexual misconduct allegations are steadily on the rise, and we've now seen need for non-consensual sex workshops, and over 40% of American women have encountered some form of sexual violence. Nearly a quarter of divorces cite domestic abuse as a cause of divorce, and 60% for infidelity, and 75% cite lack of commitment.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah. So we're seeing a post-pandemic teen mental health crisis. We know that. And the youth risk behavior study conducted by the CDC, that American teen girls are engulfed in a growing wave of sadness, violence, and trauma. Growing up in social media culture with impossible beauty standards, online hate, academic pressure, economic difficulty, self-doubt, and there's extraordinary levels of depression and sexual violence are leading to a rise in demand for counseling and mental health services.
Just hearing you read that, I was reminded of this interview that Rick Warren did with Carrie Nieuwhof, kind of like in the throes of the pandemic. And this is like 6 months in, so it's still a little wacky, right? And Carrie asked Rick, what's your prediction about the next, season in light of this pandemic? And he said, we're going to have what he called a grief tsunami for the next 10 years, for at least the next 10 years. Yeah. And I just think like a guy like Rick Warren, pastoring for over 40 years, making that prediction, it was laced with hope, because he was like, with this much sadness and pain, people will be forced to eventually come to the light. And we, as believers in Christ, have the light. So, man, just hearing that, every time you said a percentage, I'd say, tsunami of grief, tsunami of grief, tsunami of grief. So, wow.
Well, that's our hope today is, as we talk about these statistics and, they're obviously staggering, and but we're going to drive towards the hope.
That's right.
Obviously.
Absolutely.
That's what we're here
for. That's what we're here for. That's right. That's right. That's right.
But before
Let's be sad.
And that's the podcast.
Doom and gloom.
But before we jump into some of those specifics, let's talk about post-Christian culture, individualism, and the move towards more secular society and how that plays a part in all this and your thoughts on it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, obviously we're in a conversation with our church that's starting August 6th, right? And talking about all things what you just talked about, CJ. So we're going to be talking about the gospel in sex and the gospel in porn and the gospel in LGBTQ plus and all those kinds of things. And honestly, man, our posture, our heart is just kind of go on record as a community, as far as what our position is, but maybe even more so what our posture is as we move forward to lift up Jesus, right? And man, I got to thinking about this months ago that, man, it really doesn't make any sense to delve too deeply into what CJ thinks, what Ricky thinks, what the congregation thinks, what this person thinks, what CJ believes versus what Ricky believes, all this kind of stuff. It makes no sense to really delve too deeply in that conversation if we don't agree as to who's in charge. And because if we don't agree there and can see and identify with, okay, can God say no? Right? Then I'm not sure what fruit can be gleaned, right, moving forward. So my point is, I just got to thinking about that, and I just said, you know what, we really need to understand kind of like the sin beneath the sin, and kind of like the not the problem, right? You just kind of talked about the problem. These are the problems, but what's behind the problem? And the old cliche, right? It's sin. It's all sin, But I think we do well to understand and be more aware of what sin looks like in the generation we're living in. Yeah. And I think that's the opportunity that we have as we kind of engage in these conversations. And you used a wonderful word, we are post-Christian. Yep. Scholars use the word postmodern. And so basically that's a term that's been thrown around for, 60, 70 years, but essentially postmodernity, postmodernism, post-Christian, whatever you want to call it, is a worldview. Right. Worldview means this is how I understand reality. Right. This is how I show up in the world. This is what I understand the world to be. And, postmodernity basically says that there's a view of reality that's based on a narrative that's crafted or created by human beings, as opposed to objective truths that can be discovered by human beings. Yeah. So I just make it simple, right? Because I don't know if you can get away with that in church, but I call it, you and I are living in a moment where authority has moved from institutions to individuals. Yep. Right. So essentially that's in a nutshell. Yeah. But I think when you talk about illicit porn, casual sex, pornography, even LGBTQ plus, gender and all the good stuff, it boils down to we are in a moment where this is what sin looks like. Authority is no longer grasped from the outside of me. By and large, most people look at authority on the inside of me, right? Like me as the hero.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kind of like the layer beneath the layer, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The engine of the car that's running the culture today. So if that made sense, we may be okay.
No.
What do you think about that?
No, that's really insightful, and I totally agree. Like you were saying, like we need to get at what's below it before it's the base work.
Yeah.
It's where we need to start the framework for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was thinking about when you were saying that, I was like, man, redefining truth in this process also allows us then, and like what's going on in culture, we're redefining truth, and then that allows us to reassign worth. And so when we do that, you know what I mean? Then we define that.
That was rich.
You know.
Ooh.
So then all of a
Say
sudden,
that again, CJ.
So redefining truth, then it causes us to be able to reassign worth. So for the individual, because individually we're saying like now, like I'm going to place your value. Your value doesn't come from who God says you are. Exactly, it comes from who I have come to understand you to be.
Absolutely. Well, too, you know, it goes even deeper on some levels. And I know, you know, we got to get back to the questions, but like I just got to thinking. Postmodernity, give or take, scholars will debate. Post-Christian is around, you know, let's say 350, 400 years old, right? Give or take. It gained influence or dominance in America 185 years ago, right? So on the other side of the world wars, right? Like that's the dominant thread of how people perceive a reality. But I would say that any epoch of how sin has gained pervasiveness or dominance in culture, I argue, I don't know if I'm right. I think it's a reaction to the church's failure.
Yeah.
So I think it's all like you look at the 1600s and Enlightenment scholars and philosophers starting to say their stuff, i.e. like Descartes. Descartes is what, 1600s, somewhere in there. And he's a philosopher, like famous line, I think, therefore I am, right? Which kind of like spawned all of these humanist influences that have, you know, percolate all the way up to postmodernity, right? And I don't want to nerd out too much, but these guys were wrong. They were secular, but they're reacting to, man, the popes are stealing everything. And what's up with the Crusades? And goodness gracious, I think this Pope has a solid gold casket. And what's up with what were the things they used to sell? Indulgences. Like you literally give the priest some money to get a dead uncle out of purgatory. Like they had to say, well, this can't be God. This can't be authority, right? Does that make sense?
I have a question.
It's just crazy. So I wonder how true that is. I don't know, but I know the current postmodernity, post-Christian, as you call it, is a reaction to the failure of the church. So
well, and I totally agree, and I'd actually see that. I would say that, and and I say this cautiously, within the last 25 years, and not to belittle anything that we've done. But there's been, I would say, not failures, more so maybe missteps a little bit, even with some of purity culture and some of the things that we've missed out. Do you know what I mean? And we had great intentions with it, right?
Absolutely.
But we drove a wedge between that us and them mentality, and it was about being right.
That's it.
And what we thought to be right.
Well, I mean, now you're coming down a great rabbit hole, right? Like, I feel like some of the missteps, I love your word, I think that's right, because the heart was right. Right. But the methodology was probably a little off. So whether it's purity culture, whether it's how we attacked the pro-life virtue, how not the virtue of it, but how we went at it, and all the missteps, right? But I feel like the church has found a way in her missteps to copy and paste the same missteps that the religious leaders of Jesus's day was doing.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's good,
And so like the Pharisees, scholars always say that the Pharisees love the law. The problem is they put fences all around it. So they okay, that's God and that's his law and it's so precious. So, okay, so we can be as righteous as we can. Let's not just honor the law. Let's create 19 more around it to make sure that law is always observed, right? And so I can walk on Sabbath day, but I'm never gonna walk more than 15 steps. Whatever the case may have been. And I feel like evangelicalism, primarily the last 75 years, we've created fences around the law, right? Purity cultures, that's what made me think of it, right? The law is, man, Jesus has ordained sex for marriage, right? So we never taught our kids the beauty of it. and why it's precious and why it's worth waiting on, and how even if you do fail at it, God will still love you. No, we scared them to death, right? I think I saw it on your research. 9 out of 10 people have sex outside of before marriage, right? Yeah. So like purity culture did not work. Yeah. It did not work. So anyways, that's what had me thinking. I don't know if that's was worth all that time.
No, that's really good.
It's precious point, dude. That's awesome. Wow.
No, I appreciate that. No, I feel the same way. And it's funny to like revisit that and think about it, like how it played out even for the Pharisees and stuff. Cause I look back a lot and we hold such like, man, I can't believe they were that way and that they treated the people that way and that, you know, they encountered Jesus in that way. And I was like, they meant well. Yeah. They actually did mean well, a lot of them.
Right. Sure.
And so that's why they set up those fences and those laws and everything. But it missed the point. It missed the main thing.
Well, it's encouragement for how we're going to get to our hope at the end of our conversation on the other side of it, because a lot of people are listening right now that are turned off by the church. So was Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Jesus was turned off by the religious people of his day. Yeah. So I think if we really pursue, you know, I hate to sound like one of those people, but the real Christianity, in the true heart of the faith, we have some opportunities to really find some commonality amongst one another.
He spent a lot of time like redirecting and fixing a lot of their direction they were headed. He's like, no, this way. Right?
Exactly.
So that actually kind of leads into our next question. It says, statistics show that culture, especially a younger generation, seem to be heading more towards a sexual recession rather than a sexual revolution. This seems counterintuitive than one might expect in a hypersexualized or sex positivity culture, but what are some of your thoughts on this?
I'd love to know some of your thoughts as well. All the statistics point to less, more connection amongst the Z generation and less connectedness than we've ever before seen, right? So they're, and I'm talking about the onset of technology, right? You cannot be alone as a kid today. It's impossible, even if you want to be, right? You're always around something, or you're around a camera, or you're around this, you're around that. There's more connection, but less connectedness than ever before. And I think what ends up happening, bro, is that the last generation was the first fatherless generation. And even if your father was present, he was 9 times out of 10 absent spiritually, absent in maturity, absent in knowledge. And so I think at the end of the day, at some point, the math overwhelms you. You know what I mean? Our kids, by and large, have not been given any spiritual tools. And on top of that, they haven't been given any parental tools. They are bombarded with connection to the point where they're titillated on every hand. The average teenager, okay, except for the ones at this church, but the average teenager is perfectly ill-equipped to have a meaningful conversation with the opposite sex, with eye contact, right? With any sort of kind of emotional weight or depth to them, because basically they were basically not allowed to fail, not allowed to do anything that might not work, not allowed to, play outside with trees. I don't know. But my point is that the math, we're seeing the math of that. Sexual recession, it's true. I've read so many articles that talk about especially teenage males who are just staying in teenage. Like the teenager is now like no longer a teens thing, right? 20s, 30s, 40s. I talk to 30-something-year-old guys all the time in our church who are like, man, I just don't know. I don't even know the first thing about how to talk to a girl or how to get a girl, how to ask a girl out and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, you go ahead. But man, this is a big topic that's going on in our culture. Yeah,
the extended adolescence is a really big one.
That's right.
And a huge concern with the digital environment and stuff that we're in. You see a lot of guys, longer. I'm like, man, you're in your 40s and you're still playing video games like you're 16. Like, hey, get out there and experience real life.
That's it. And, our posture in the church, though, has to be, we have to remind ourselves, it is not their fault at all, right? It's, you get what you invest in, you get what you create, you get what you parent. And so my heart really breaks. At the same time, though, I think God is really going to use this generation because I think we've done so much to make sure they didn't have any pain. And now they have all this pain, right? And I think that pain has to go somewhere, and it's going to go to some negative places. But eventually, we're going to have the opportunity to win those folks over because the church offers transcendence. The church offers meaning. The church offers something that is concrete, that is tangible, that can be smelled and touched and felt and sensed. And so I think in this connected world where it's all virtual, right? And it's all, from high experience to high experience, no tools with which to deal with the low lows of life. That's what the church does. We may not do anything else well.
Yep.
But that transcendence, authenticity, meaning, I think we have something to say for this generation. And I think God's going to use this generation. I think the next generation under me and you, so like the 25s and unders, if the Lord is coming back in me in your lifetime, bro, the revival is coming through these kids. Yep. They are perfectly set up for it because they have washed their hands clean of institutions, and because everything's lied to them. We've talked about that on this show before, but I think they're going to be so open to true organic witness of the faith. And I think they're going to get house churches, right? Me and you ain't going to one, but I think they're going to get it. Like, I think I get so excited. I mean, I'm scared to death, but then I get so excited about how God will use that crucible to really emerge a revival through these kids. So I'm excited about that.
Me too. Well, and the potential for them, as you're saying that, to leverage the channels and the environments that they're in, once they grab healthy boundaries on that, imagine what they can do. Because now the platforms and the access that they have are exponential. Right. It's insane.
Well, they know how to use this stuff.
Yeah.
It's native. They have such a value. One thing I love about this generation, they were raised to tolerate everything and to love everything. And that was a little scary too, because me and you just don't have it at our age. We just don't have it. But they do. Imagine that kind of mercy, that kind of compassion, that kind of humility with the gospel at the center. Yeah. That's why they're going to be able to win over the culture, man. So I get excited about that. But yeah, sex recession, it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is good. It's weird because that's you want there to be a sex recession amongst unmarried young people, but you don't want it to be a connectedness recession. And I think that's the real burden, is that we have a slew of kids in 20s who are undervaluing marriage, undervaluing deep connection, yet hungry for it. Yeah. So it's crazy.
Well, I think a lot of the concern in that too was the digital access and the pornography piece lend itself to this idea, the instant gratification that happens with that. And it's hard to match with real life encounters.
That's right.
So being cautious of the space is appropriate, because a lot of, an older generation is like, oh man, this is just the devil, But it's kind of funny. Like you said, most kids are a product of their environment, and their environment was growing up in this, and they're overstimulated. But a lot of that, we used to have that old saying that said, if he can't get you to sin, he'll just keep you busy or something like that, And then here our kids are overstimulated. And I just am seeing all these connections, and I'm like, man, how do we steward what we have and where we're at? That's right. And kind of, and turn that into something where we see revival in our younger generations. And they say, hey, I do want to be connected in a personal way, and I see the value of this, and I can manage that in a way that's actually healthy.
Well, we see evidence of it too, with the hope that you kind of point us towards. The Christian 22s, 26s, 23s who grew up with a phone, right? And grew up with, if you will, a sexually laden kind of moment in their lifetimes. A lot of the Christian ones that have been discipled, that have been poured into, are putting their phones down. Yeah. These are folks that are saying, you know what, I use it for work, I leave it at work. Because they have seen now 10, 15 years worth of what it's doing to them, and they get it. And they know that it's empty. And that is left you wanting, right? So anyways, it's exciting, man. There's some bad news, but there's a lot of potential for good news too.
What do you see as the kind of role and toll? And we're going to get to the hope for sure here, but the role and toll that you see pornography playing in relationships, marriages, and overall sexuality in the culture as a whole. Yeah, can you just speak to that real quick? Yeah, well, it goes back to the postmodern thing, right, where God gets taken out of the throne and I'm in it. Yeah. Right. And so some of the taglines, it's, I'm going to find me. Yeah. I'm going to discover myself. I'm going to, when I get to college, I just want to find myself, Yeah. I want to find myself. Yeah. I just need to find myself and, do me. I'm going to do me right now. And, but when God is off the list, there still has to be a God. Yeah. And this culture in this moment is saying, well, so I'll be God and I'll make my choices and I'll do my thing. And it plays into the pornographic lust spirit, right? Porn and what you are subjecting your flesh to and your mind to and your heart to is all about titillation of me. It's worship of me. Yeah. It's not about mutuality. It's about
objectivizing, right? Objectifying, excuse me, the other person to where now, even though you may not in your heart believe that that's what love is, your mind does, right? Because you're inundated yourself with that. And so how can you go deep with a person if you can't be vulnerable? And porn says there's no such thing as vulnerability. You're supposed to objectify the other person. And it's all about you, and it's all about self-worship and just climax and all this kind of stuff. And even though people may want true connectedness and a real relationship, man, porn, the movies that we see today, the flashes and the imagery we see on social media, in no way prepare us for reality at Panera Bread, trying to get to know this person. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's really sad. It's really unfortunate. And I'm not going to try to say holier than thou. Some of my history, some of my battles that I've had to face in my life and the whole nine. So I know the pain. I know the stain of those things. But man, it's crazy. I think you said $97 billion. Yeah. So that's 10 NFLs. So I think NFL grosses $9 billion in revenue a year. So porn is 10 NFLs that we don't see, but most people in the culture are seeing and not talking about it. That's why we're talking about it at our church, because we got it. Nobody ever talks about it.
Yeah, so we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's impacting, marriages and, the statistics with broken relationships and divorce cases and even the mental health crisis. Like, when we were never meant to carry ourselves at the center of it, we weren't designed that way. So I think a lot of the mental health crisis is coming from us breaking under that pressure. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so there's that. And then also the whole idea of like it being put out there with this, that it's sex it's transactional, and so it's wrecking relationships, and that I think like it becomes something that it's like for barter and trade, so it cheapens it, right? And so we're looking at it, you're seeing it kind of that way. Totally. And so just kind of, those are just some of the dangers, obviously, a few of the dangers of pornography, but also some of the stats were like kind of leaning that I've noticed, and I was actually shocked by this, is domestic violence disputes as well as sex trafficking and some of that stuff was coming out of the like pornography trade or environment,
Absolutely.
And so I didn't know that. I didn't know that kind of feeds. It's a feeder from some of that, know. So hypersexualization. So
well, you mentioned something about how the enemy, maybe you said something about the enemy keeps you busy. And I heard Patrick Lencioni on GLS today say that, one of the most stealthiest or most impactful tricks of the enemy is to get you to believe he doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And so just like, people not understanding that, there's just a free-for-all here, and it's just a sexual freedom and a culture, right, where you just get to do whatever you want to do with no repercussions whatsoever. And so it's not that it's there, but it's that it's growing so rapidly that I'm not sure if we can put our minds and our hands around it. Yeah. So anyways, yeah.
So, and this, obviously, we're talking, with the sex-obsessed culture and all of that and the mental health crisis. So what are we doing about that, particularly as a church, that we're really excited about to kind of address that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, man, me and you and the other, 13, 14 pastors on our staff, we talk about how our congregation is doing, and we talk about, what do there seem to be any patterns forming amongst our people? And one of the things we noticed in the pandemic immediately with our Pastor of the Day ministry, anybody can walk into our church anytime they want and talk to a pastor. And one of the things we noticed was, the number of people that are walking through our doors is increasing. The number of people that are calling our phones is increasing. At the same time, it seems like, the pain is so acute. The problems are so entrenched that, we think these people deserve a bit more than the usually 3 to 5 sit downs that a pastor would have just to encourage them in scripture, to love on them, to hold them accountable. There's so much that you and I do, and it's great, and it is the fat of the bat. But the pain was so acute, the problem so particular, the stress is so sophisticated that we started looking at each other saying, this requires sophisticated trauma, requires sophisticated support. And so our church has faithfully caught this vision, and we'll be opening up plausibly at the end of 2024, but for sure early next year, a Christian counseling center that will be staffed by professional licensed family counseling. What's the word? Is it FPCs? Professional PFCs?
Yeah, marriage and family. Yeah,
marriage and family. Whatever that is. Anyways, they're gonna have a degree and license.
There you go. Smarter than us.
Yeah, and basically the vision is to offer Christian-based professional licensed counseling right here on our campus.
Yeah.
So it won't just serve our congregation. We think actually it'll serve to the tune of 65% the surrounding community. Because when we did our research, we discovered that there was a great dearth of not only Christian counseling resources in the Coachella Valley, but counseling, period. And there's some issues that people are going through in our valley mentally that there are literally no qualified counselors with which to service them.
Yeah.
So we got a little scared. We said, we got to do something about this. So our vision is that one day, and we've already built the office, it's already upstairs.
Yeah.
We're starting to look for the director around September-ish or so. So I'm hoping that we have somebody by Christmas. Please pray for that. And they're going to hire some people. We're going to have a whole consortium of counselors that are going to come in and help people and minister to them. So I'm really excited about it, man.
Yeah, me too. I know it literally is going to be life-giving to the families and individuals and people of our community.
Amen.
Like, I mean, because, I'm looking at it from people walking in and saying, I can help them and point them, but there's some deeper issues that need to be addressed in that way. And for longer periods of time than we can.
That's right.
And the volumes.
That's
too.
right.
So it's going to be substantial.
Yeah. And I want to say to everyone listening too that there's, of course, the fat of the bat is discipleship. Every person listening needs to be actively involved with the community of believers in a small group kind of setting, whether you're discipling others or they're discipling you. That's where we live. However, there are those sophisticated things that require that kind of support. Yeah. So I just want everybody to know, I see my counselor, a professional licensed Christian counselor, once a month. Because I started to learn that, man, my stuff is kind of sophisticated and I need a little bit more than a there. I need somebody to walk me through some stuff. And I do that as part of my health regimen. You know what I mean? So there's no shame in it. I think there's shame in not getting help when you can, right? So I just want to say that for our people. Yeah, well, I mean, same. I would say, she probably wouldn't care if I named her, but Tricia Cunningham actually saved me and my wife's marriage. Yep. I mean, we went to her and as part of this, I know and that was like, that literally was, that gave life to our marriage again. Amen. And so there's no shame in that. That's it. And I would say, I know you and Kelly, and I would say you have a banner marriage and you're raising your kids in the admonition of Jesus Christ, bro. And it's just like, we need to tell those stories because whoever's listening right now, whatever you're going through, you can get help. Yep. You can get support. You can get encouragement to be what God has destined for you to be. You're listening right now. You're addicted to pornography. Jesus can help you. Jesus' church can help you. You're going through that overwhelmedness with digital connection. You're a 20-something-year-old and you have no idea how to identify with the opposite sex or how to form a solid relationship or friendship. Jesus can help you. Yeah. Jesus' church can help you. So, man, we are excited about what we're going to be able to do for people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We kind of hit on it a little bit, but as we kind of get towards wrapping it up, what's the light at the end of the tunnel, some encouragement, hope, or opportunities that you can offer in light of the gospel message that we're called to share? Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I would just say that, historically, God has always used great trouble to create pathways for great triumph for his people. It's weird, the human heart, postmodernity, right? Like it's weird. We create these problems that cause such trauma and pain and ruin for us. But Isaiah 55, that was what was going on with the children of Israel, right? They made a mess of themselves. They ruined their lives, probably jeopardized their entire posterity. I mean, the nation was literally about to fall apart. And just when you would think God was going to say to them, you're done. Yep. Man, I'm killing all of you guys, or go, be away from me. Verse 1, Isaiah 55, come, all who are thirsty. And I still get teared up because I've been reading that verse all week. Yeah. But whoever's listening right there, and you made a mess of your life, and there's ruin, and there's trauma, and there's pain, God is the God who says, come, if you're thirsty. And later on in the passage it says this, I will not abandon you or forsake you. That's the gospel. Yep. Amen.
Yep. John 16:33 says, you will have tribulation, but take heart. I've overcome the world.
That's it. That's it. We got hope.
Yep. We got hope. So as always, we want this conversation to be engaging, but we always want to provide helpful resources.
Yep.
What are some things you'd like to recommend, just kind of share?
Yeah. Well, I like some of the stuff you've put together. I think that, and I'm going to let you talk a little bit more about Pastor Tim Keller here. But I think, we always talk about discipleship resources. So get in a small group, call in our church if you're local, call a church that's Bible believing, Jesus loving in your community if you're local, and get involved in a small group of community people just like you. But I would say too that sometimes when you need that sophisticated support, many churches in whatever community who's listening, especially ours, has something called a Celebrate Recovery ministry. So they're there to help hurts, hang-ups, and bad habits, right? And through the gospel, give you steps to walk from being in bondage to freedom. Things like grief of divorce, codependency, alcohol addiction, porn addiction, sexual addictions, all those good things. And so those are always good kind of low-hanging fruit resources if you're ready to kind of tap out and say, yeah, it's me. It's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. But I would say too, man, please listen to our trending series. We're going to just be talking about these hot topics and talking about the light of the gospel in the midst of all this brokenness that's going on around us. What about you? What resources do you have for us?
Well, like you said, Celebrate Recovery is obviously a great one. We offer services here at the church like Pastor of the Day that can point you in the right direction, get you kind of some of the connect you with local resources that'll get you the help you need. But a big one for just digital and online is, Tim Keller through the Gospel Coalition. And we'll throw some of those notes and links into the show notes so that you can connect with those. But, obviously Tim covers a wide gamut of, he pretty much talks about everything from, postmodernism to Christianity or to, prayer, how to, all of that stuff. So
that's right.
But yeah, Tim Keller is a good one. And then, also too, we just wanted to say, if you guys have any questions or comments that you'd like to submit to us and maybe we can help you with or answer directly, always feel free to submit that to the other 6 days at southwestchurch.com. And that's the number 6. And
the number 6.
The number 6.
Yes.
Yeah, and you guys can send that to us, and we'll try to get back to you and answer those questions or point you to some helpful resources as well.
Yep.
But any last comments or thoughts before we wrap up?
I'm excited about the fall, man. We're getting out of summer, and it's going to be a fall. Other 6 days, we're having fun. We're going to be talking about a lot of stuff. Send in your questions so we can get in trouble.
Yep.
In Jesus' name.
Amen. Well, there you have it. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Other 6 Days podcast. Be sure to hit that subscribe, follow, share, and like, and spread the word. And as always, take what you've heard and turn it into something you can do to further the gospel in the world around you. Thanks again.
Peace.